Thank you again for taking time to meet with us today. And what we're going to discuss is just in the next 10 to 15 minutes is going to be really exciting. I think you're going to love it. First things first, let's talk about who we align with. National Life Group is one of the second oldest insurance carriers in the United States, 173 years in business. And one of the things that I really love about this company is their philosophy on how the community is not only understanding the way protection works, but also this idea of tax-free retirement. And so when we think about connecting with a life insurance carrier or one of this credible source, one of the things I like to ask is simply this. If you had to explain to somebody your basic definition of life insurance, how would you explain it? And for most people, it's, well, protection against assets, protecting our family if something were to go wrong. And here's the thing that I love most about what these guys have done. Back in the 1930s, they invented something called living benefits. And when we think about alignment, the reason why I get so excited to share their story is, well, living benefits is life insurance you don't have to die to use. And when I first learned about this a few short years ago, it really made sense to me that that's more value for just not only the family that we can pass our assets to, but also for the policyholder themselves. And so let's kind of talk about exactly what they do in just the next few minutes. Okay, let's first talk about this idea of dying too soon. Well, for most people that have life insurance, that's what it really is. It's death insurance, but that's not as marketable. And so they call it life insurance because it's designed to protect our life. But let's be honest, we're more than likely to become sick first, agreed? And so here's where the idea of living benefits comes into play, helping us when we actually could use it the most. And so let's use an example of $1 million, what we call living policy. Okay, sure, I die too soon, my family gets $1 million. But what if I don't? What if I come down with a heart attack, stroke, cancer, or unfortunately COVID-19? What we're saying is that National Life Group would allow us to access up to 90% of that death benefit while we're still here. Real help at a real time. But then there's a third piece that really makes them unique, something called living too long. Well, why is that a risk, you might ask yourself? Well, let's think about this for a second. If humans are living longer than ever before, that also means that we have to plan for a longer retirement. And since we don't know when the expiration date will be, well, how do we know how long to plan for? So what does that mean? Why do we say live too long as a protection? Well, currently, National Life Group is one of the first carriers to allow someone to convert their death benefit into a lifetime income tax-free after a minimum of 10 years in the policy and a minimum age of 60. So why does that matter? Well, what if I didn't die too soon and what if I didn't become ill? I can now convert my death benefit into another income stream tax-free. So that's really what I got excited about when I learned about their philosophy in this small little illustration of die too soon, becoming ill, and living too long. But let's break down the next thing, which is what are the qualifying events for these living benefits? Let's first talk about something called terminal illness. I get the terrible news from a doctor that I have less than a 2-year life expectancy. And here's what I got excited about. What if we can help people access up to 100% of their death benefit tax-free the moment they got a diagnosis that they're terminal? And here's what I'm finding, guys, is sometimes doctors can be wrong. And if I happen to outlive that diagnosis, if I accelerate my benefit here, it's not a loan, it's not something that has to be paid back. I can simply use those funds to invest in alternative treatment. I can use those funds to check off a bucket list if that's what I choose to do, or simply just have a fighting chance to keep things going. And so that's what the terminal illness protection would do. Let's go further. Let's talk about something called chronic illness protection. If I couldn't perform 2 of what they call the 6 activities of daily living for a 90-day period, here's where we're focused on helping families in a completely different way, which is what if we could help people access up to 1 to 2% of their death benefit as monthly income tax-free? In other words, if that was $1 million policy, that's $10,000 to $20,000 per month financial infusion into the family to help while that individual is focused on recovery. Because here's what we know, guys. Not everyone passes away from a chronic illness, but while they're dealing with their health crises, the bills keep coming in. And so our focus with this particular protection is to give people that financial security of how do we keep life going while we focus on our health. In the last 2 categories, critical illness or critical injury, I'm going to highlight the big 3 here for a second: cancer, heart attack, and stroke. And as we all know, so many of us have been affected by at least one of these 3 illnesses. And here's what we also know. 40% of foreclosures in the United States are directly tied to a critical illness. Very common. But here's what we also know. People are surviving these events, but their finances don't always survive. And so our focus with this particular protection is what if we can help people access up to 70% of their death benefit while they're still here to keep life going while they're focused on recovery. And lastly, critical injury. National Life Group, one of the first to offer this type of protection. Protection against severe burns if you're a firefighter, protection against brain trauma, protections against paralysis and coma. In other words, truly serving the community in a completely new way. Rather than be like traditional life insurance, which is, well, if your insurance agent, you call them and ask for some help, their response would be simply call us when you're gone. Here, we're talking about a completely new way, which is how about we help families while you're still here, right? And so that's really the protection piece of what we focus on. But why do we believe that that's an important part of our story when it comes to a full financial picture? Let's talk about the next thing. And what this really did for me was it gave me a clear picture as to what this product can really do for the community. When you take a look at these 4 categories here, life insurance, retirement, disability income, and those living benefits we just spoke about, I'd like for you to think for yourself, how many of these 4 do you currently possess? In my case, my personal story, when I learned about this, I had 2. I had my retirement plan, my 401k, and I had a life insurance policy. Here's what this allowed me to do, guys. It allowed me to reallocate funding from those 2 categories, and I stopped the contributions and simply reallocated them here. And because of this multiple needs, one combined solution, I now picked up disability income and those living benefits we just spoke about at no additional charge to me. So our focus is to look at where are we currently allocating funds and give you better value for the same. Right? And so in a lot of cases, we're able to give people more value for what they're currently investing in 1, 2, or maybe even 3 or 4 of these categories separately into one combined solution. And so that's what I got really excited about, was it really gave my family peace of mind of now knowing I have all 4 categories. But let's think for yourself. Ask yourself, how many of these 4 do you currently have, right? And how many of them do you need? In my personal opinion, we're human, we need all 4. And that's what we're trying to establish and solve with this one unique product. But let's go a little bit further. Why was I willing to use this strategy instead of my traditional 401k plan for retirement? What you're looking at on the screen here is an actual snapshot of the market, just a 15-year window between 1997 through 2011 to illustrate 2 types of investment strategy for retirement. The orange line represents anything tied to the market. The blue line represents something called an equity index account built within a life insurance product. And so first glance, you can easily see that the blue line is outperforming, but let's break down why. We know about the big dips in the economy called recessions, and as you're looking on the screen here with this graph, in that orange line, a 401k, for example, is tied to the performance of the market. Meaning in 2001, when 9/11 hit, 2 wars start, major recession, people took a huge hit to their retirement account. But as we all know, the US economy always bounces back. It's cyclical. Recessions happen every 7-10 years historically. So as you can see on the graph, it came back. But here's the challenge that we're facing, guys. As things rebound, guess what? It rebounds just in time for the next recession. The next hit, 2008, real estate meltdown. And so what we're finding with so many people that have retirement strategies tied to the market is there's this yo-yo effect with our money. But that's not our biggest threat. At the end of that 15-year window, as you see, about a 38% growth if that individual started with $100,000 back in 97. On paper, sounds pretty good, except for one thing. For most people, they have a tax-deferred account, meaning the taxes are going to be paid at the time of distribution. So in this example of a 38% growth, after taxes, I'm right back down to where I started 15 years prior. And so that's really one of the threats that we may see ourselves in, guys, with a tax-deferred plan is Uncle Sam. Now let's talk about the blue line, something called that equity index account that was exclusively designed by the rich in our society. But here's why. First and foremost, let's take a look at those years of recession. Index strategy simply means this, something called a zero floor, meaning, for example, if anything drops below 0% growth in the S&P 500 index, they freeze my equity, as you can see back in 2000, 2001. And then when the market rebounds, you can see the market growth within the same index strategy, up to about 9.75% capped. So in the years of growth, our income grows. But in the years of loss, like it did in 2008, it freezes our equity. And then lastly, what you're seeing is a 97% growth versus the 38% growth. But here's the biggest kicker. It's not the fact that you have a zero loss strategy. It's the fact that because we're under the umbrella of a life insurance product, we have the ability to distribute those funds tax-free through policy loans. And so not only are we able to avoid loss of any of our equity, we're also avoiding future taxation. And so this is what I got really excited about, guys, when I thought about where I was currently investing with my 401k plan. Investing in that orange line, I knew about the ups and the downs. I also knew that I was gonna have a tax problem later. And one of the things that I really want to discuss is simply this. How would you like to design your retirement? Would you want something that's more tax-free? Or would you want something that's subject to higher taxes from here on out? That's what I got excited about with what we're sharing with you. But let me be clear, we're not the only company that offers this blue index line. Here's what makes what we do unique. First, an index strategy for future gains, and you don't have to worry about ever losing money. You can sleep better at night during turbulent times like we have now. The second, those living benefits as a safety net against your health, built in at no additional charge to you. And then lastly, remember that live too long puzzle piece? This is what makes us different, guys. If this was your 197 on the screen in your tax-free account with your life insurance, National Life Group is the only company currently that allows you to combine that with your, for example, $1 million death benefit and combine them both for retirement after a minimum of 10 years in the policy and a minimum age of 60. And so that's really what makes this such a game changer, everyone. It's simply this. Where else am I going to get access to a tax-free retirement? And where else am I going to invest money and not have to worry about market loss?